Hello and welcome back to another Magic the Gathering EDH deck tech idea. Today we are taking a look at the team up that we needed, Shattergang Brothers. It is a 4 mana 3/3 Junt commander with 3 different activated abilities. Either for 3 mana and sacrificing a creature, each other player sacrifices a creature. For 3 mana sacrificing an artifact, each other player sacrifices an artifact. And for 3 mana and sacrificing an enchantment, each other player sacrifices an enchantment. This is quite a unique Junt commander that will draw us a lot of value from sacrificing our permanents to also punish our opponents. And while we are sacrificing our stuff, we want to benefit from it a lot. But first of all, it is a 4 mana commander and its activated abilities cost 3 mana, so we first need to ramp him out. So we play Ignoble Hierarch, a 1 mana 0/1 with Exalted, and it can tap for one of the mana symbols that we are actually in. Furthermore, it is a cheap creature that we can later on sacrifice into Shattergang Brothers to make our opponent sacrifice a creature. We play Nature's Law, a 2 mana sorcery, search a library for a forest card, put it onto the battlefield and then shuffle. And another great turn 1 play is Wild Growth, a 1 mana enchantment, and whenever enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional green mana. Just as with Ignoble Hierarch, we can also sacrifice this one later into the Shattergang Brothers. We play 3 Visits, a 2 mana sorcery, search a library for a forest card, put it onto the battlefield and then shuffle. We play Farseek, a 2 mana sorcery, search a library for a plains, island, swamp or mountain card, put it onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. This card will most likely always find your Zero Terrorist Proving Grounds. And we play Utopia Sprawl, a 1 mana enchantment, enchant forest, and as it enters the battlefield choose a color, and whenever enchanted forest is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional 1 mana of the chosen color. While we are ramping, we want to build up our board to have a powerful turn with the Shattergang Brothers. So we play Servok Schematic, a 2 mana artifact, and when it enters the battlefield or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. This is a lot of value in a Shattergang Brothers deck, because the schematic itself is an artifact and the servo token is an artifact creature, so we already have a lot of different card types that we can use for the brothers. We play Heaped Harvest, a 3 mana artifact food, and when it enters the battlefield and when we sacrifice it, you may search a library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. We are playing this card because it triggers on ETB and when we sacrifice it, so we can later on sacrifice this one into the Shattergang Brothers to get another basic land and also force our opponents to sacrifice an artifact. We play Ichor Wellspring, a 2 mana artifact. When it enters or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. To make sure that we hit our land drops, we play Mycosynth Wellspring, a 2 mana artifact. When it enters or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may search a library for a basic land card, reveal it and put it into your hand and then shuffle. We play Solemn Simulacrum, a 4 mana 2/2. When it enters, you may search a library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffle, and when it dies, you may draw a card. Solemn Simulacrum is a great card in this deck because it is also an artifact and a creature, and it triggers on ETB and when it dies. We play Treacherous Blessing, a 3 mana enchantment, and when it enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards. Whenever you cast a spell, you lose 1 life, and when it becomes the target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it. Due to the fact that we don't target it with the Brothers ability, we can basically draw 3 cards from this card and then immediately sacrifice it to make our opponent sacrifice an enchantment. There are a lot of different ways on how this deck can win the game, and one of it is by draining our opponents out. For example, with cards like Agent of the Iron Throne, a 3 mana legendary enchantment background, and commander creatures you own have, whenever an artifact or creature you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. There is also a certain Goblin theme in this deck, which is why we play Pashalik Mons, a 3 mana 2/2, and when it or another Goblin you control dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. For 4 mana and sacrificing a Goblin, create 2 1/1 red Goblin creature tokens. This deck produces a lot of tokens, so we play Mirkwood Bats, a 4 mana 2/3 with flying, and whenever you create or sacrifice a token, each opponent loses 1 life. We play Marionette Apprentice, a 2 mana 1/2 with Fabricate 1, and whenever another creature or artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. While we force our opponents to sacrifice their creatures with the Brothers activated ability, we also play the Meathook Massacre, a 2 mana and X legendary enchantment, and when it enters the battlefield, each creature gets -X/X +X until end of turn, and whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life, and whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you gain 1 life. A lot of stuff will be sacrificed in this deck, so we play Mayhem Devil, a 3 mana 3/3, and whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, Mayhem Devil deals 1 damage to any target. And now let's talk about a few of our most powerful creatures in this deck. We play Prosh, Skyraider of Kur, a 6 mana 5/5 with flying, and when you cast Prosh, create X01 red kobold creature tokens named Kobolds of Kur Keep, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast Prosh. Furthermore, he is also an instant speed sacrifice outlet because sacrifice another creature and Prosh gets +1/+0 until end of turn. We also play Mahadi, Emporium Master, a 3 mana 3/3, and at the beginning of your end step create a treasure token for each creature that died this turn. With our edict effect from the Brothers, we can make a lot of treasures in our end step. We also play Braids, Arisen Nightmare, a 3 mana 3/3, and at the beginning of your end step you may sacrifice an artifact, creature, enchantment, land or planeswalker. If you do, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with it. For each opponent who doesn't, that player loses 2 life and you draw a card. There might be scenarios happening when our Shattergang Brothers get removed, so it is good to have Braids as a backup sack outlet. We play Kranko Mob Boss, a 4 mana 3/3, and we can tap him and create X11 red goblin creature tokens where X is the number of goblins you control. Another combo piece in this deck is Shattergang, Squirrel General, a 3 mana 3/3 with Forest Walk, and if 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus that many 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens are created instead. For 1 black mana and sacrificing X squirrels, target creature gets +X -X until end of turn. And as I have just talked about combo pieces, we also play Squee the Immortal, a 3 mana 2/1, and you may cast Squee the Immortal from your graveyard or from exile. Even without Food Chain, Squee is a great card in this deck because we can sacrifice him over and over again into the Shattergang Brothers and just recast him from our graveyard. When it comes to more thematic sacrifice outlets, we also play Siegegang Commander, a 5 mana 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield, create 3 1/1 red goblin creature tokens. For 2 mana and sacrificing a goblin, Siegegang Commander deals 2 damage to any target. We also play Sling Gang Lieutenant, a 4 mana 1/1, and when it enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens. You can sacrifice a goblin at instant speed, so target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. We also play Siegegang Lieutenant, a 4 mana 2/2, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control your commander, create 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, and those tokens gain haste until end of turn. For 2 mana and sacrificing a goblin, Siegegang Lieutenant deals 1 damage to any target. And if you want to win more in this deck, you just play Food Chain, a 3 mana enchantment, exile a creature you control at X mana of any one color, where X is 1 plus the exiled creature's mana value, spend this mana only to cast creature spells. We do play Squee the Immortal, so we definitely want to play this card, simply to make an infinite amount of creature mana, and due to us recasting Squee over and over again, we just need something like Impact Tremors on the battlefield to win the game on the spot. This deck either wins with a Food Chain line, a Shattergang Warren Soul Trader combo, or simply by controlling the board and overrunning your opponents with an army of goblins from Kranko Mob Boss, or by draining them out with all of your different aristocrats. So there are a bunch of ways of how this deck can win, and over the time you will find out for yourself which way you prefer the most, and then you can simply adjust the deck list. So make sure to check out the full deck list in the notes below, let me know which cards you would add to the deck, which legendary creature I shall feature next, and then I would say see you in the next one. Goodbye guys.